You know, in the Narnia book, The Silver Chair, Aslan sends Jill on a mission to find the lost prince of Narnia. Well, Jill and Eustace. But Aslan gives signs to Jill that she will need to follow, that they will need to follow to direct her on the mission. And when Aslan gives her these signs, she's in Aslan's country. And he tells her specifically, "Here on the mountain I have spoken clearly. I will not often do so down in Narnia. Here on the mountain the air is clear and your mind is clear. As you drop down into Narnia, the air will thicken. Take great care that it does not confuse your mind. And the signs which you have learned here will not look at all as you expect them to look when you meet them there. That is why it is so important to know them by heart and pay no attention to appearances." Now, as it turns out, exactly what Aslan says is what happened. In Narnia, the path that he took them on and led them on was not at all the clear one that they thought it would be. In fact, everyone else who had gone looking for the prince had gone from a completely different way. They looked like they were going far out of their way to get to it. And at several points, Jill even thinks that maybe they've gone the wrong way, especially when things get hard. Yet in the end, her and Eustace's companion, Puddleglum, reminds them that when they are following the signs, as bad as things may seem, they can know they are on the right track. Well, when God led the people out of Egypt, the text specifically tells us that he did not take them on the most direct route. Look at verses 17 and 18. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, "Lest the people change their minds and when they see war and return to Egypt." But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up and out of the land of Egypt, equipped for battle. So, they go out of Egypt and they're ready for battle. But God knows that there is a better route that's more indirect. It's not the route that any of them would have taken. In fact, there are documents and records of slaves escaping from Egypt, and they all go the route that the Israelites thought they would go, the route that God avoids. So that to the human mind, that route seemed like the best route. But God knows best. They had to trust his leading, just as Jill and Eustace had to trust the signs of Aslan, even when they seemed wrong. Yet this way was best, because God knew that even though they thought they were ready for battle, they would flee at the first sign of it and want to go back to Egypt. In fact, this is exactly what happens when they get to Canaan. After sending the spies in the land, and the spies come back and say it's going to be a difficult battle, they all think, well, we should just go back to Egypt. God knew that when things got really hard, they would stop trusting him. And so he took them by a different route, a route that would make trust in him actually easier, not harder. It's a longer and more out-of-the-way route, like Jill and Eustace took to Rillian, but it's the better way. Youth, here we need to remember that the shortest, most popular way is not always the best way of doing things. The way that comes naturally to our minds is not always the best way. Instead, we have to learn to trust God's ways that he tells us in his word. For example, people today are looking for political solutions to injustices like abortion and racism. They think that a change of laws will bring a more just society to all those that God created in his image. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with change of laws and political solutions if they're actually fair laws for everyone. But the thing is, those won't actually get rid of the injustices. We know this in our mind, but when we see problems in the world, like the killing of the unborn, and even how that is racially targeted, we want to respond and fix it immediately through some kind of law. What we know in our heads gets confused by the thick air of the complications of the system around us, as Aslan put it. Well, he didn't say all of that, but the thick air part, as he put it. We start to doubt God's ways and start to think that political solutions might be a better way to do it, but they won't be in the long run. Even if abortion was made illegal, people would still seek it illegally. Even if all the laws in the U.S. were able to prevent racist actions, people could still harbor racism in their hearts. That's because we are sinners in our hearts, And all of these injustices come out of our hearts, the sin that's in our hearts. God's route may seem slower, but it's more effective. Change people's hearts through the work of Jesus Christ and the gospel spreading. That seems like a more roundabout way, like the path God took the Jews on, like the path that Jill and Eustace had to follow. But ultimately, it actually brings real change. Political solutions to sins of injustice can only at best be like fences that hedge in people's actions. They may seem like the faster way, but they ultimately won't change anyone or change anything. Instead, God uses the gospel from person to person in churches, through ministries like pregnancy resource centers and other ministries like that, to change people's hearts. Then as hearts change, society starts to change too. It may be slower, but God knows the best way, so we need to trust him. You guys think about that, and I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, I'll see you on Monday.